So I left and went out on my own when I was 16. I went to New Jersey where I had an aunt. Mm-hmm. So from there I went to school. I went to night school and Newark College of Engineering, and finally wound up at Rutgers doing night classes. So that's where I got my education. And also got my love for radio, because I taught radio communications at Rutgers University during the war at the Signal Corps. We had two 16-month 8-month courses. So I ran 2 of them for 16 months during the war, and that's how I really got my start here. Because after the war, I was looking for something that I wanted to do. I had an engineering, so I decided to come here and open a radio school. I had been teaching Signal Corps classes for 2 years, so I had all the material. I came here and opened a school at 8th and Main Street called the Institute of Radio and Television. And I had prepared 2 8-month courses from the material I had from the Signal Corps. And I ran that school for 3 years, very successful, and graduated several hundred veteran students. Most all went to work in radio stations or radio repairs. And during that time, I bought the radio station, WIVY. I had the Institute of Radio and Television on 8th and Main Street.
And the GI Bill,
yep,
was the way these people were going to your school, right?
I had 300 veterans.
Yeah.
150 in the daytime and 150 at nighttime classes.
It's hard to overstate the importance of the GI Bill in so many lives.
It's true. People don't realize. There was a lot of training that was insignificant. It is true, but there was a lot very valuable. Even barber schools and things like that, they were trades that these boys could get into. And we trained veterans for radio repair service or for broadcast engineers. Every radio station has to have a licensed broadcast engineer. And it's a difficult test to pass, so we taught our veterans to pass that test.
Well, Against All Odds is definitely an appropriate name for your autobiography.
Yeah, because of the childhood that I went through a pretty sorry space. And also, there's this part of my life that even at age 16, there was a terrible depression. My father moved to Indianapolis, and I went there with him. He couldn't get a job. There were no jobs to be had. And I was working in a Liggett soda fountain. I was supporting him and in a furnished room for a long, long time. And the story is that he brought in another guy to live with us in our little furnished room, bedroom. And I didn't like that. So I got up and ran away and left and went out on my own at age 16. And everything I did from then on was alone.
And just to follow up on that, you subsequently reconnected with your dad, or?
Not eventually, yeah. Just on one occasion, my aunt got us together, but we were separated. I was on my own at age 16, but I still continued to go to school. And I went to night school to Newark College of Engineering and Rutgers. So,
well, let's come back to Jacksonville. It's post-war Jacksonville.
Yeah.
You came here in '46.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things that you have to pay attention to in your resume is you were one of the founders of the San Jose Country Club.
Yes.
And I think that is a really important fact.
Yeah, I think we had, I'd say 12 people that started the club. It was more than 12, because we had to get 300, the 12 people, we had to gather up businessmen. We got 300 local businessmen to put up $1,000.
To acquire the land and
Yeah,
and start.
Bold School was a beautiful hotel for many years ago during the 1920s, and they had their own golf course. So we had a group of about 100 men, local businessmen, who bought the property from Bold School.
And so what is now the San Jose Country Club was part of that hotel
That's right.
property.
That's right. They had their own golf course.
Mm-hmm.
The Bold School was a resort,
Mm-hmm.
and they had their own golf course. So we bought the golf course for, I think, $300,000. We all pitched in $1,000, and I don't know how many. There might have been, whatever it was enough to buy the land. And it was an old, dilapidated building, but a beautiful Spanish architecture. So we restored it.
And today, you still play some golf.
Yeah, I
and
play golf
you
there,
visit
yeah.
the San Jose Country Club on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You must be very proud.
Oh, yeah. And we have 1,200 members, about, I believe, now at San Jose. It's a beautiful place. I've built my life around that with my family. We lived a couple of miles away, and that was the center of our life.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a beautiful life.
And in addition to running radio stations and so forth, you were involved in a lot of civic affairs. I mean, the San Jose Country Club is part of it, but there was the Commodores League.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Well, I had a big boat, a yacht, for a long time, a 40-foot Hatteras, and I decided to form a yacht group of people who were interested in boating, and I put together a group called the Commodores League. 40 people, including Dick Sudduth and a lot of prominent businessmen. And the idea was, and many of these had yachts, the idea was to work with the Chamber of Commerce to entertain VIP business people coming to town, to show them what a great place Jacksonville was.
Mm-hmm.
So we set that up, and it's running still. It's still running. They have about, we had a limit of 40. I think they have 50 members. They meet every month at Epping Forest.
And showing Jacksonville off from the water was and still is a very good thing to do.
Especially with people who are interested in starting a business here or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. So they still do that. Well, the commentaries became very, very successful. In fact, they were so much so that we put them in books. In each year, we'd print, Jones College would print several hundred books of the commentaries for that year. So we had, and I had them from 1980 to 96. And I had copies of them. A house burned down about a year ago and burned all of those commentaries up.
And music changed, and what was popular music was something different at a point. I guess you segued into rock and roll and...
Not much,
No?
a little. Well, yeah, Elvis Presley, of course. In fact, I have one great honor. I introduced Elvis Presley from the Florida Theater when he came here.
And where was Judge Gooding?
And Judge Gooding said, he sent out a notice and said that if he wriggled his hips, he'd put him in jail.
So you were introducing Elvis.
Yeah.
And the judge was putting pressure on the kind of performance that Elvis was
He didn't
going.
want to see any hip shaking there.
Yeah. So tell us what happened.
Well, he did a show at the Florida Theater, and I emceed it. It was the theater was packed to the rafters, and it was full of teenagers. So you can imagine. I met him. He was a great guy, good-looking young guy, and the Florida Theater has the place upstairs. Have a walkway going upstairs where the artists change clothes and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with him a little bit. He was a very nice guy. At that time, he was nothing as great as he became.
He hadn't become the king.
No, he was just...
but a nice guy, and that night, at least, he performed under Judge Gooding's restrictions.
That's right. He sure did, because Judge Gooding said if he wriggles his hips the way he has been, he'll go to jail.
Well, that is an interesting chapter or sub-chapter in your life.
Yeah.
Your
well,
connection.
it's an honor. Who else can say they introduced Elvis Presley on the stage of anywhere?
Anywhere, but that particular concert, because of the controversy.
Yeah, he's just beginning. He's just starting his career.
Yeah, this would have been mid-50s.
Early 50s,
Early
I
50s,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah. He and also Pat Boone was just starting his career. And Pat lived here with his grandmother, so he was often at our house. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Great family man. The first thing I did when I got here was go up to the 10th floor of the Barnett Bank building, where the former mayor, Alsop, had an office. And I think that was a smart thing, because he gave me a lot of pointers about the city. That was the first day I was here. I went to see him.
So someone coming to Jacksonville to start a business.
Yeah, and he was very nice. His name
And
was
he was
John,
the former mayor.
John Alsop, yeah. So,
There's a bridge named after him,
yeah,
the Main Street Bridge. Most people call it the Main Street Bridge, but
yeah.
it's named after him.
Yeah,
so
right.
he welcomed you. He was glad to see you.
Oh, he was a fine gentleman. Told me all about, you know, the town, how great it was going to be, and he was right. It was just at the beginning of its real life. Because at that time, when I came here, I think there was 75,000 people in the city. Between that and 100,000.
Yeah.
You could walk down the street and everybody knew you. You know, hey, there's Ed Bell. You know, believe it or not, my name's not Ed Bell, but people still call me that when I walk down the street.
Sure. And I think people will want to know what you're doing these days.
Playing golf.
Playing golf, finishing your autobiography.
And writing a book.
And enjoying life.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm entitled to it. I'll be 98 years old next week.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday a week early.
Yeah.
And thank you very much, Ed Oberlie, Ed Bell, for being with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me.